Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. I'm Rob the Lord Humongous.
And I'm Shawn the Dick Humongous.
And today we have a very special guest with us, probably one of the more well-rounded martial artists, I'd say, after going through. I didn't know you, well, we'll get into that in a second, but got Kyle Watson with us. And UFC fighter. He's what really surprised me as well, Kyle, is that you also did Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah, for about 9 years roughly.
Good God. So why don't you fill the listeners in on your background and not just, like jiu-jitsu, but your martial arts background as well.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. Definitely always glad to share some info, and I appreciate you inviting me. But started, definitely like everybody else, watched the UFCs. Growing up, I'd go up the family video and buy the used VHSs and watch them and what have you. It was very interesting in the UFC. Had no, that was not any kind of foreshadowing. I wouldn't have had the slightest idea that I would actually be fighting the UFC one day. I just was really interested in martial arts, and I was from a small town, didn't have any options to train, so I wasn't able to start until college. Well, I started with a coach, Jack McVicker, who that was his two main disciplines that he taught was Jeet Kune Do and Brazilian JiuJitsu. So oddly enough, that's why I'm a right-handed southpaw, because Bruce Lee advocates your strongest, most accurate weapon closest to your target. So I could never. My Thai boxing coach always tried to get me to switch, but I could never go back to like a normal Western boxing stance. But did JKD, Jiu-Jitsu, and then started transition into MMA. So I started training with wrestlers, like collegiate wrestlers, and then got a Muay Thai coach, and I feel like over the past several years got decently well-rounded.
Nice. So it just all kind of came together then with all of your training. And then, so what made you want to go into competing in mixed martial arts, or was that just kind of like a goal after a while, after you had gotten some experience doing, Jeet Kune Do, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just kind of like, hey, let's try out mixed martial arts, or was that somewhere else in there for you?
Well, actually, at the point when I first started, jumped into MMA, I had only done the Jeet Kune Do and the Jiu-Jitsu, and honestly, it was never, when I first started, it wasn't, the UFC wasn't kind of in the shape it is now as far as it kind of making it seem glamorous. I just honestly wanted to see if my Jiu-Jitsu would work, and I thought it was cool and just kind of wanted to try it out. So I actually ended up, my first fight, through a buddy of mine, got me in touch with a show that Dan the Beast Severn put on in Indiana called The Danger Zone. And I fought a boxer from Canada, and I ended up triangle choking him after getting punched many times en route to the submission. It was definitely fun. It was pretty exciting, so I just stuck with it, and it just kind of transformed into kind of a passion.
Cool. So you were on the season of The Ultimate Fighter with George St. Pierre, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So what was it like working with George St. Pierre or training under him, and did your style mesh up with what he wanted to coach, or was it just kind of, he was there for guidance?
Well, it was actually a pretty amazing experience. I mean, living in the house was terrible, but the training was amazing. I couldn't have asked for a better scenario. Literally, when we first got there, we fought to get in the house, and then they picked teams, and George was very, he was there. I didn't watch this season of The Ultimate Fighter, but I heard, McGregor was very kind of like hands off, and, didn't kind of like, hey, you're on your own. You gotta make it on your own kind of attitude. And George was completely opposite. George was completely there for us. He was like, he trained with us, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. He said, hey, I know my limitations as a coach. He's like, so I brought my coaches to be your coach. I'm your training partner. So he's like, he definitely taught us stuff and helped us, but he sparred with us, grappled with us every single day and helped us. And so that was really awesome. And he brought, John Danaher was like our main coach. And he also brought in Sean Williams and a couple other, real high level guys. And it was just an amazing experience. And one thing that I respected a lot of people didn't see on the show was, I think coming into the show, myself and Nam Fan, and maybe one or two of the other guys actually had a lot of fights coming into the show, so we had a little bit more experience. And I think we're probably, I use the term mature loosely, but we're probably, I think I was one of the more mature ones, and just because of my age. But early on, Danaher pulled me aside and asked if we can kind of consider me as like the kind of unofficial like team leader, so that I could kind of pull together the guys in the house if things were kind of falling apart. And I took that as a sincere compliment that he would ask me that, But as far as like stylistic matchups, I think like I'm very open minded. Like I think that you can learn from everybody. So I meshed well because George is very like, hey, I'm going to bring you in the best people from each discipline and show you as much knowledge as we can.
Very cool. Very cool. I think that's one of those once in a lifetime opportunities. So I don't know if does it count as a spoiler alert if it's been a while since it's been on TV, so I can't like ruin it for anybody. But so how did it end up going for you on the show?
Well, so I was able to win I had 4 fights in the 6 weeks. That's the most that you can have, and it was pretty tough on the body for sure, cutting weight every time and what have you. But I was able to win my first 3 matches all by rear naked choke, and then I lost the semifinals match by decision to the winner of the season, Jonathan Brookins. And it was tough. It's like I'm definitely not going to make excuses. I definitely would like to say that even if we weren't in that scenario, I think if we had fought again, I think Brookins is the kind of style matchup that's bad for me, and he probably would have beat me anyway. But it definitely made it very difficult that we trained together for 6 weeks, for 4 hours every day. And then, you kind of know each other's tricks and it's kind of weird. People don't understand like being out of your comfort zone like that. You're with all new coaches that don't know your style, don't really know that much about you. You're living in very, very uncomfortable house situation. Like the sleep is really rough because there's no doors on any of the rooms, so you can hear everything, and they leave the lights on. And so it's just one of those things where it's kind of like you're part of a lab experiment. That being said, though, again, I think Brookins is the type of guy who would have beat me either way. So I'm not going to sit here and make excuses. And I think if anybody was going to beat me, I was happy it was him because he's a good person.
So would you spend another 6 weeks in the house again? I guess not, maybe.
Well, if you would have asked me that like the week that we got out of the house, I would have said absolutely not. Now looking back on kind of what it did for my career, I definitely probably would do it again. One thing that's kind of nice too, a lot of people don't know. And again, like if we fought now, I don't know if the scenario would be the same, but the guy I fought to get in the house, a lot of people don't know that, I fought Joe Duffy, who's now, making a splash. And it was pretty interesting fight because, we didn't know anything about each other. And I'm thinking, okay, he's a tall Irish guy. He's for sure going to be a striker. And then apparently, like I'd heard he'd done really well on like the grappling scene in Europe and what have you. So he came out and right off the bat he pulled guard, and I was like, well, that was kind of nice. So it made it for an easy pass and finish the fight. But it's nice because he was kind of on just starting, kind of getting his career going, and mine was kind of winding down. So it's kind of nice to see him having some success now.
So you're in St. Louis now, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that where you're from originally, or did you just find your way there?
No, that's kind of interesting circumstances too. So I am from Central Illinois, probably about an hour and 15 minutes from St. Louis. But when I went and moved off to college, I was a few hours away in Illinois. And when I got done with school, I was working a full-time job out of school, but I was fighting on the side. And I had a pretty lucrative job, and it was definitely going somewhere. I was getting promoted, and I would probably still be doing that if I, due to it's kind of a lengthy story, but due to like some interesting circumstances when Matt Hughes and Robbie Lawler opened their gym called the Hit Squad. They were looking for a jiu-jitsu coach, and through some odd circumstances, my name kept getting dropped, and I'd kind of gotten just a little bit of local notoriety, and I got a call from Mark Fiore, who headed up Hughes' training camp, and asked if I would come down and kind of try out to be the jiu-jitsu coach at their gym. And we hit it off, and so I was like, man, I'm never going to get this opportunity again. When do you get like 9-time world champion calling you, asking you to come be a coach? And So that's kind of what helped me get me where I was, because I moved down there, and day in, day out, I'm grinding with like really, really tough guys. And, so I was able to teach full time, but still train, twice a day, every day, and, further my career. So.
And so what do you think of all the new grappling tournaments that are kind of coming up, like the Eddie Bravo Invitational, all the Metamoris type things? Some of them have been around longer, but how do you feel about those new jiu-jitsu competitions that are coming up?
I think it's great. I think, I think any kind of attention drawn to making jiu-jitsu more of a known sport, and, actually paying the athletes for putting the time in, I think is great. The hard part is just that, is the rule set. Like different tournaments have been adopting different rules to kind of see which one works the best. I think definitely the Eddie Bravo one seems to be working and seems to be very interesting. But I think it's great. I think, there's plenty of room for more events like that to open up and grow. And, I think any spotlight cast on the sport and getting some of these athletes the attention they deserve, I think is great.
So if you had to pick between which one you wanted to watch, is there one you prefer, or are you like a fan of all of them?
I'm just a fan in general. Like I'll if I'm free, like my schedule's so hectic now. I have a new baby, just a 2-month-old baby. So now I can only watch what I have time for. But honestly, I would watch anything. I don't necessarily like the format that encourages draws. I definitely want to see the finish and what have you. But I'm a fan of seeing any of these high level guys, put it on the line. So I would watch any of them, honestly, and I would pay for them too. So.
Yeah, it seems to be like, I'm not trying to nitpick one way or the other, but, like you said, there seems to be some that promote like a draw. So if we just stall it out for 20 minutes, then we get a draw. But like Eddie Bravo, I do like, because like you said, they're fighting for that finish. And if they don't get that finish, then there's a way to determine who's going to be the winner with that. Yeah. So thanks to like what Shawn was saying, these like, large scale events, are we going to see, or do you think we're going to see a growth in jiu-jitsu, kind of like we saw with MMA, where, it's like the Ultimate Fighter comes on and everybody's like, oh shit, it really brought more attention to the UFC, and, more people started getting involved. Do you think we're going to start seeing something like that with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or do you think it's going to kind of slowly grow?
I think, I don't think we're going to see that explosive growth. I mean, I feel like the growth that we have seen over the last few years has been pretty explosive, but I don't think at the same level. I think you still have, if you look at the mass, audience, especially there's still a lot of people that are UFC fans that are still not in the know. And, I still, anytime I'm out, if I go to Buffalo Wild Wings or wherever, you still have all those people who, as soon as it hits the ground, they're like, oh, stand them up, quit hugging. And they don't appreciate or understand what's going on the ground. So I still think it has a long way to go for it to kind of get to rise like the UFC, but I definitely think we're making steps in that direction. It's just that, there's a lot of things that are in the way of jiu-jitsu to kind of get that far, I think, just because, it's just like some of these new guards that come out, like the 50-50 and things like that, where it looks like super boring, and people who train, we know what's going on. There's a little micro battle going on for grips and what have you. But to the untrained eye or someone who's watching, I don't want to see that, it's just so it's got, and people want to play that way because no one wants to lose. So that ends up making for, a little bit more of a boring scenario. So I think as long as they keep trying to evolve the rules around, helping, to, elicit the people going for the finish, I think that, it's going to keep making strides.
What do you think of the kind of resurgence of people attacking the legs with the heel hooks and, particularly heel hooks, I guess, more than footlocks than we see in MMA? Because it's kind of seeing a resurgence in the jiu-jitsu scene that I've seen as well. Have you been training that a long time, and what do you feel about that?
Well, I think I'm kind of from the same kind of school of thought that, like me, not personally, like my school, we work leg locks, but it's like, it's one of those things where like through my upbringing, we didn't really work them that much. And it wasn't like my coach was like, oh, these are terrible, like dirty tactics or anything like that. It just really wasn't covered that much. I think maybe just because most of the time, like I feel like a lot of coaches that teach more sport teach towards IBJJF rules. So you just kind of leave out the heel hooks and some of the ones that the leg locks that are meant for advanced belts because, you know, it's like, hey, why are we going to teach these if you can't really use them? And so I think my upbringing was very similar to a lot of others that, you know, just you didn't see it very often. Now, I think it's great. I like the mentality of Gary Tonin and Eddie Cummings and John Danaher where they're saying, hey, you know, it's a great submission because you're attacking like one of the weakest joints in the body. And, you know, it's harder to protect and what have you. So from the standpoint of being a complete grappler and trying to go for the finish, I think it's great. Do I think it's hard, like as a school owner? And I have you know, like Mondays, Wednesday nights, I almost always have 40, 45 people on the mat. And so it's like, you know, I can't rationalize, hey guys, we're going over heel hooks tonight when I can't get around and watch, you know, 40 people, make sure nobody gets hurt. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm all for it, but I'm all for it when I feel like the skill set and the knowledge matches. So like, I wouldn't be out there teaching my white belts heel hooks, not because I don't think it's a problem with someone who understands the move applying it correctly. I think it's the where you get injured are the people who don't know how to respond to it correctly and either tap at the right time or they try to squirm out of it and they hurt themselves. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just talking to one of the guys from our gym about that yesterday, and he's done a couple amateur MMA fights, and I said, you at least got to know how to defend and where the point where you gotta tap out of this or how to roll out of it. Because if somebody tries that on you, so.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even in my own career, like, you know, I've definitely lost my fair share of matches, absolutely. But, you know, I feel like I take pride in the fact that I don't get submitted very often. But if I go back and I look at all the times I have been submitted in competition, I'd say a good chunk of those have been leg locks. And it shows me, it's like, man, along the way, I should have been more proactive about learning them instead of kind of just being like, oh, you know, I'll either learn it at some point or I'll just hope that I never get in that position. You know, I think that, you know, hey, if you want to be a complete grappler, people are going to be going after your leg at some point. You might as well learn it.
No, I agree with that completely because especially, like you said, if you have MMA fighters, it isn't like IBJJF or, you know, where they're going to be protected by white belt rules because they're going to get heel hook, toe hold, all the other knee barred. Everything's open for them. So as a school owner, I mean, that's something like a lot of people have, like who are really into jiu-jitsu have talked about. One of the big goals being like, I'd like to own a school one day. Was starting a school everything you thought it would be, or did you run into a lot of pitfalls or just some good obstacles there starting out?
No, that's a great question. So I was very fortunate, and I definitely, you know, count my blessings and try to be thankful for the things that I have. And I was lucky because the job that I had out of college was a very customer service oriented job. Like I was a manager for a company called Kaplan. They do test preparation. So like I was an operations manager. So I was working with a lot of students and day in, day out, a lot of communication, a lot of customer service. And that is really what the martial arts business model is based around, is really making sure that you're giving a quality product and giving good customer service. So I basically kind of took a lot of the lessons from my past job and I was able to kind of like, you know, just, you know, transplant it into this business. And I was lucky, like I'm a pretty frugal guy. So I just, instead of like, you know, like a lot of people do where they like, hey, let's open a really big gym and let's offer all this stuff and not have the student base to support it. That's where you see a lot of gyms fold. So I took some advice of my coach and, you know, I took a lot of my UFC savings and just funneled it into the startup of my gym. So I didn't take out a bunch of loans. So I didn't have any debt to start out with. And I also, the other big thing was I started small. Like I got a really small place. It was like 2,500 square feet. And, you know, and I place I'm in now. And so I just did a smart way to make sure that I had the students first to rationalize, you know, growing and making the gym bigger. A lot of people do it the other way around. Now, I promised myself and my wife that I would work my butt off and never let myself fail. So I will say this, that I work way more hours than I ever did when I was a manager, and, when you're your own boss, if like you want to be good at something, I just feel like, man, it takes a lot of man hours. So I work really, really hard, but at the same time, it's all worth it because I can't really say like, I wish I could give up all the administrative stuff and sit behind the desk, but the trade-off is I get to go out there and teach every day and be around my students and do jiu-jitsu as a day-to-day thing. So, you can't beat it.
No, absolutely not. So do you think for bringing students in, because I know some people have an issue with this, is it more like word of mouth? Is it going out and meeting people in the community? Is it cold calling people, kind of like I was just watching Wolf of Wall Street last night, so it was kind of interesting to think about like how would this ever work for a martial arts business. I was like, yeah, it's kind of scumbaggy in a way, but like I'm not trying to get your business secrets. You don't have to throw them out there, but
no, and I don't have any. Like honestly, like I just like I said before, like I was very lucky and blessed to kind of fall into some certain situations. So it was nice coming off of The Ultimate Fighter and just kind of riding those that wave a little bit. Now it doesn't matter when somebody walks in. I don't care that when they come in, no one knows I was on Ultimate Fighter. That is literally the last thing on my mind, and I don't care. Like most people that come in that just want to learn martial arts don't care how many world champions you have at a gym. They don't care, they just want to come in, have dependable coaches that they trust. They get a good workout and they have fun, and lose some stress. That's what they want. And so that's what I try to provide. But as far as I was lucky, I picked a location where there's a lot of competition in St. Louis, but there's not a lot real close to me. And I'm right smack dab in between two universities. So I get a ton of student traffic and don't really have to spend much on marketing. So it's like a lot of times when I ask people, hey, how'd you hear about us? It's almost always, it isn't like, hey, I looked you up and saw you in UFC. It's always, I was looking for martial arts. You're the closest one to me and you have good reviews. That's as simple as that. So I just make sure that once they come in the door, I make sure that they are taken care of, that they have a good experience, that they have some fun, they leave, having a good workout. I think the biggest thing is the reason why I don't have to be salesy. I don't mind the sales process, sit behind the desk. Would I like to give that part away? I will eventually. But right now, it isn't. I make sure that we have a gym and an atmosphere and classes that kind of sell themselves. So by the time someone comes to my office to meet, they already have their mind made up. So I don't have to sit here and be a car salesman. I can just be like, hey, here are our options. What works for you? And that's the best part about it. I don't want to ever be in a position where I have to come in here and try to talk them into signing up. If that makes sense.
No, it does. No, it does. And I mean, for a lot of people as well, I've heard. Excuse me, a little bit of coughing going on. I might be getting a little sick, but I've heard people say, jiu-jitsu isn't for everybody, and from like I guess maybe a owning your own business perspective, do you think that? Sorry, I lost you there for a second. Do you think that's true that jiu-jitsu isn't for everybody, or it is for everybody? Because I think it's something we could share, but like you said, some people make up their mind by the time they get there or into the office to sign up.
I think it is for everyone. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's always going to be situations where I've had a lot of people come in that have like certain injuries that they say, hey, I can't do this or I can't do that. And there's some people that have some issues physically that might present some challenges. But I think overall, I think it is for everybody. My biggest challenge, and I don't think it's a terrible challenge. I'm always trying to find ways to fix this, but like with like kickboxing, you can come in and I would say there's more instant gratification. You can come in and punch a pad. You can come in and punch a heavy bag and get a workout. And, there's that instant gratification. With jiu-jitsu, we take things slower because if you're going to be torquing on people's joints and necks, we want you to go slow. So in the beginning, I feel like people who have never done any kind of grappling sport and come in, sometimes they can be easily frustrated because it's like every move doesn't seem intuitive. It seems like it's 10 steps. And then, you're going really, really slow, so you don't, sometimes it's hard to even see the point, like, why am I doing this? Why would I be in this weird position? So it's a constant battle of trying to get people past those comfort zones of being on the ground with someone sitting on top of them, and then showing them that, so helping them find success in that first class, whereas in kickboxing, you're going to have success right away. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, because it's, like people said, blue belt could take anywhere between a year to a few years to get. And, like I originally came from a Taekwondo background where they're like, congratulations, you've been here 2 months and you can throw a front kick. Here's your, here's a belt. Good job. Like, you don't get that instant gratification like you're talking about. So it does. And everybody thinks of, like, but you said the UFC, everybody, you go to B-dubs, you got people screaming, hey, stand them up, quit hugging. You guys are, it's stupid. I've been there too. That's why I stopped watching at Buffalo Wild Wings to get agitated. But yeah, it does make sense because it is something you have to help people work through, especially in their comfort zone. And do you guys offer like a women's only class? Or speaking of comfort zones, that's something I've heard both sides on, like whether you should have like either a women's only class or a mixed class, or what do you think?
Well, I don't right now, and do I see in the future possibly offering that? Yes, we're at the point now where, like, when I first started, it was so hard to get girls because they come in and not see any other girls. You need girls to get girls. So if you have a couple of girls to start off with that are kind of cheerleaders, that can always help you. You know what I mean? But in the beginning, it was very hard, and even when I got to the point where I had like 5 or 6, they would never come on the same night. So it was like really difficult. You come in and either see no girls or one girl or whatever. But then it's grown, and I think I did get a couple of those cheerleaders that really helped, and now we have about 30 girls that grapple, and it was nice actually just recently just to kind of, I wanted to do just partially for marketing purposes, but also just because I wanted it, like I invited all the girls to come in on Sunday, and I said, hey, bring your gis, let's take pictures. And, for like the website show that we have a strong women's, representation. And I was like, in turn, or what I'll do is I'll do like an hour and a half like clinic just focusing on the smaller grappler and movements that are going to be better for females. And so it was nice. It was a good turnout. And I haven't posted the pictures yet. I'm still kind of toying around with how I'm going to use them. But yeah, we have about 30 girls now, and it's funny because I asked them, and pretty much every time I brought it up, I was like, hey, eventually would you guys like to see a women's only? They're all like, no, we want to go with the guys. And so kind of surprised by that. So what I try to do, like when newer girls come in, I have basically, for my new folks, I have like a curriculum designed for like the first like 30 classes. I know what they're going to do. So basically that first 30 classes is going to provide them like a direction from each of the main positions, like what they should be doing. So it's, cause that's what I hear all the time when new people come in, they get frustrated because they're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know what do I do in this position, So this curriculum I designed is like to kind of give them direction from each position. And I have, I basically have it so that in the beginning, it's a little bit more self-defense oriented. So you can explain like, oh, have you ever seen the UFC, or have, if you were ever like knocked down and put in this position, someone's on top of you or in between your legs. This is a bad spot to be in, but this is what you can do to possibly get back to your feet or be able to subdue the person. So I kind of use it in those terms to get them to understand that, like, hey, I was telling people, say, oh, it's uncomfortable, I don't want to be there. And I'm like, well, the time you don't want to learn that that's an uncomfortable position is when something happens to you. It'd be easier to get that, that kind of discomfort out of the way now, so it's just one of those things where, I try to take strides to do that. And definitely our women, population has been growing.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, I have a question because I've been at a couple different schools, and it's a little bit of time ago now, but I had that same problem. Like where should I be? I'm so lost, and I think a lot of new people to jiu-jitsu do feel that way, and I hear that from our white belts, or just even how do I start off when I roll? What do I grab or go for? And those basic stuff. So that 30 classes or that curriculum, is that something that you came up with? Or something from your experience, you said, oh, these are the things that I think are essential for a newcomer to learn and to get on their way?
No, that's a great question. So it is something I came up with. Like, basically, for a long time, I don't do belt testing. I don't I feel like you can't really put it in a nice, neat box and say every body type needs to be good at these moves when, jiu-jitsu is so individual and you can be good at so many different things and be completely different from other people. However, I do feel like in the beginning, there's definitely that whole idea of knowing what to do in a lot of the positions is very important. Whether you're going to eventually be good at spider guard versus be good at half guard or butterfly, that's irrelevant in the beginning because you don't even know what you don't know yet. You know what I mean? So, so basically we just kind of talk about in that first, the way it came about was I wanted to I started noticing that I would keep track of what I would teach. But what would happen is it'd be hard, there's so much stuff you could cover that I'd realize, man, like by the time we get back around to something that needs to be seen pretty often because it's important, like side control escapes, that needs to be seen quite a bit, a lot more than escaping 50-50. You know what I'm saying? So I started looking at that. I'm like, man, I need to have a better way of cycling through. So I sat down and basically tried to make almost like what I would call a quote unquote blue belt curriculum. So basically I put down all of the main positions, the moves that I feel like are just absolutely important, a must. And I looked at, and I just basically started making marks of which ones of these are important, which ones are kind of, not that important. And I basically put it in order so that we see, say you're going to see side control escapes in 1 year, you're going to see it 3 times where you might see attacks from knee on belly once. You know what I'm saying? So trying to put trying to prioritize how often I want the students to see things. Well, while I was doing that, that's how that kind of 30 class curriculum came about. I'm like, well, out of this, what would I say is the most crucial things that a beginner would need to know and kind of want to understand from a conceptual level. And that's just really kind of how it came about. I want that instant gratification to come earlier, so that initial frustration that people see in jiu-jitsu, because I always see if you can't keep people for that first 6 months, that's the most delicate time is once people get to where that first 6-8 months and the light bulbs start popping off, I feel like you got them. They're addicted at that point, but you got to keep them up to that point, if that makes sense.
Man, and that's a great example of a position, too, because I remember I started and Rob was a blue belt and kind of teaching me, and I was like, man, I can never get out of your side control. And I remember just going outside of class with Rob and saying, hey, man, just put me in side control, and I'm going to work my ass off to get out of your side control, because that was one of the things. And just last week at Open Mat, I had a white belt come up to me, said, man, I get stuck in side control. I mean, and that's one of those positions where a newcomer is just like, man, I'm stuck here. And I remember the first gym that I trained at, I had a guy that came to knee on belly from side control, a purple belt, that just kept me there. And I was like, I'm trapped. I'm a 240 pound dude at that time. This sucks, man. How do I get out of this? So, yeah.
Well, and I think it's inevitable. I would say, out of all the private lessons I do, I would say almost half of them are well, maybe not half, but I would say at least a quarter are people always asking how to get out of side control. And it's inevitable because if you think about it, I mean, I'd say we spend maybe, I'm just throwing this number out there, but if you think about it, probably about 75% of your time in jiu-jitsu, maybe a little less, is spent either in some form of guard or attacking with some form of guard. There's always so, if people are constantly learning how to pass, well, you're going to be in side control, and especially as you evolve, you're always going to be going against better people, and people are always going to pass your guard. Therefore, you're always going to be in side control. So it's just, but that's just one example. I have, I want people to see, the more important things a lot more often. So now I track it a lot better. And I'm also always in a quest to evolve. I've had the experience. I'm always going to do private lessons myself, going to seminars myself, and trying to learn not even as much just new moves. I feel like there's enough out there I can still always try to be good at, and enough stuff that I can study. But I'm more interested in being a better teacher. So I'm always trying to watch how guys teach more efficiently and how they can use concepts to get people to understand jiu-jitsu better and faster. So there's a couple of guys who have been really instrumental in that for me. There's a guy down in Dallas, Texas. His name's Octavio Couto. His nickname is Hachino, and he was one of the founders of Barraza. He's a 5th degree black belt under Ol Jacare. Romero Cavalcanti. And anyways, Octavio, I've had him into my gym several times, and he's just like, he's kind of, he's sought after by black belts because he's kind of known to like change their game. And anyway, my point is, the reason why I'm bringing his name up is that like he's just blown my mind every single time I go to a seminar, do a private with him. He's not condescending at all. He's one of the nicest men you'll ever meet. But it's just funny because you'll say, you'll ask him a question and he'll just look at you and be like, "Why do you do it that way?" And I'll just be like, "Oh, that's how I was taught." And he goes, "Okay, that's not wrong, but try it like this." And they'll just show you like a more efficient way that's like, you're kind of like, why did I not know that in the first place? Why didn't I think that in the first place? You know what I mean? I mean, it's just like, he's just talking about like, just as simple as like talking about stack passes or talking about Toriano passes. He's like, why do you push both legs? And I was like, I don't know. I was taught that way. And he goes, well, if you push one leg, it's going to move the other leg. He goes, just push one leg. And I started doing like that. I'm like, wow, that's way more efficient. And it's just like all these things. And it's like, he's just very, very mind blowing. But anyway, my point is I'm in a constant quest to like bring that stuff back in and then learn how to teach my students better. So
it's all about the evolution then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you want to, so this was kind of something I was thinking about too. Like I've just started teaching out here because there wasn't really many options for me for teaching. I didn't have many places to go. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'll just start teaching. Is there a point, do you think, that it becomes less about you and more about them? Is that immediately, or because I'm only a purple, so
I think that's a question that like only you can answer. The hard part about that is like my situation ended up being a good one in that like my coach allowed me to start teaching within his class early on. He would say, "Hey, I'm going to take the beginners, you take the advanced guys," and he let me start teaching as a purple belt. And then I started teaching at one of his affiliates like one day a week on my own. I'd drive like an hour and 40 minutes, and I would teach like one day a week. And so I had my own group, and then so that helped me a lot, not only with just my confidence, but also just like my public speaking. I just started feeling just so much more comfortable, and so that helped me out tremendously. So that's why I try even here at my school. One of my things for this year, I sent out a message to all my advanced belts that I feel are capable and probably willing to teach. And I said, I want you guys to pick a subject that you like or would feel comfortable, and I'd like to incorporate you into the curriculum this year and have you maybe teach for 1 week. I would still be here. It's not like I'm like trying to get them to take on work. It's just that I want to develop more instructors and give them that confidence. So I'm trying to do that this year a little bit. But I think it just really comes down to what you want. Like here's a perfect example. One of my two of my students just opened up a place like not too far from me, but with my blessing. And one's a brown belt, and one should be a brown belt. I just haven't promoted him yet, but he's very, very talented. And the problem is he's 21, and I kind of said, "Hey man, you're 21. You've been winning a lot, and he's won some big tournaments. He won Pans as a blue belt, and he's won some other big things." And I'm like, man, I know for myself, once I turned around and started really focus on the students, my game suffered quite a bit. You know what I mean? It's like I feel like you cannot be world class level at both things. There's no way. You can't keep up with the guys at the Atos academies and the Mendez Brothers Academy. You can't keep up with those like full-time competitors if you're going to try to be a good coach. Now, you could be a crappy coach and then still probably be a good competitor, but I just don't believe, in my experience, I don't believe it's possible to be phenomenal at both. It's like you got to pick. So I just said, "Hey man, you're 21, you got a long time that you could still teach. Are you sure you want to do this now? You still have a lot that you want to accomplish in jiu-jitsu." And he's, so we had that conversation. So I just think that it's really hard. I think that if someone says, "Hey, I want to teach," if it's just like maybe like once a week and it's like very, very part-time, I don't think that would be as big of a deal. But if someone said, "Hey, I want to teach and maybe make a go of it and have my own place," you need to be ready for your own game to suffer quite a bit. Like it was very, very, very difficult for me. It's like right now I've just kind of settled into the fact that, you know what, I go and I win some and I lose some. It just depends. My last tournament I did American Nationals, I got second in no gi and I got third in the gi, and it's one of those things where it's like, would I have rather had first place? Of course. But, it's just one of those things where like, I can only train as much as I can train. I literally only train like 2 to 3 days a week in my open mats, and I'm training with blue belts. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of one of those things where I'm not gonna use that as an excuse. I'm gonna try to get as good as I can with the circumstance I have, but my focus is on my school providing a great experience. So,
dang, I'm kind of depressed now. It's I mean,
I don't want to be
sorry.
disheartened about it.
Oh, no. I didn't take it like that. It was just kind of like, it is interesting because I've gone from, like, Shawn will tell you, I'd show up at the gym and I'd just train and we'd roll and we'd do nothing. And it was just kind of like somebody come up and be like, hey, could you show me, inverted arm bar? Like, yeah, I got you. To, well, I'm teaching 4 days a week out here on the base. And I can tell there are some parts of my game that have suffered, but I still try to do something with it.
Yeah, well, let me kind of rephrase that a little bit. Like, I mean, here's a perfect example. Like, I guess it really depends on what else is going on in your life. Like, when I taught at the Hit Squad, that was a different scenario because I was paid like to just be a coach, and I had no other responsibilities. I didn't have to clean the gym. I didn't have to go out and get members. I didn't have to follow up with anybody. I didn't have to do any kind of like emails, calls. It was literally just show up and teach and show up and train as a fighter. So I would train in the morning and I would train in the evening for myself. And then right after the second session in the evening, then I would teach 2 to 3 classes. So all I had to do was that. So I was still able to, compete at a pretty high level and still teach, but now it's like now I do everything from calling and emailing every single person to managing all the members I have and developing curriculum and I have a baby and blah blah blah. Between all that's a whole different ball of wax when it's all on your shoulders and your plate. So that's kind of what I mean. If you just show up and all you have to do is teach and then train for yourself, I think that's a little bit different scenario, and I definitely missed that part. But,
I don't feel so bad now. Thank you.
No problem.
So, Shawn, you got anything else for Mr. Kyle here?
I'm used to being called Mr. Kyle.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's rephrase that. Shawn, you got anything else here for Kyle?
Yeah, Kyle's my last name.
Nice.
So yeah, I always kind of have a funny question for people before we go, and so even at your level and with all your experience, is there any guy that you see, on the mat that is a dude that you don't like to deal with? Is it a 270-pound guy? Is it a lanky guy? Is it a white belt? Who is the person that Kyle Watson is like, oh man? You got to have one.
Honestly, I don't want to fight the guy that puts me on my back. Like, I like to wrestle, and so it's funny because, like, I noticed in jiu-jitsu, most jiu-jitsu guys don't like to wrestle. They don't like to put up a fight, and it's like, it's enough to learn jiu-jitsu, but then now to learn to be a good wrestler on top of it is like that much more you gotta learn. So it's like, most of my matches, I get the luxury of either I get the takedown or they pull guard, so I get to be on top either way. I don't want to fight the guy that puts me on my back. That's what I don't like. I remember actually the last time that happened was like, or the last time, I'm not saying the last time I got taken down, but the last time I noticeably remember in competition that I was very unhappy. I actually fought Kurt Pellegrino in New York in the open class, and he threw me like head over heels. Like, we shot on each other a couple times. Like, I stuffed him like twice, he stuffed me like twice, and I could just tell he made a little switch. He's just like, okay, I'm not gonna wrestle anymore, I'm gonna play judo. And he just like stepped in and tossed me, and I just remember as I'm sailing through the air, I remember hearing the crowd just like, oh, and I went on my back and I looked at the ceiling. I'm like, I can't believe I just let him do that. And by let, I mean he definitely forced it. But it was one of those things, like, I don't like the guys that can take me down.
Perfect. Great answer.
Yeah, he can take him down, so I can sympathize with that. So, Kyle, thank you very much for coming on the show. Like, it's, a lot of insight into not only being a martial artist, and especially UFC experience, but like schooling or stuff. I mean, I think that's a lot of stuff a lot of people don't hear very often about. Oh, it's the life. Some days just getting up and going, but I understand it is a lot of hard work in there.
Yeah, even how to be a leader, man. Because I think leadership is important in jiu-jitsu. to keep people coming to the sport and to say, hey, this is an example of somebody that I want to be like, and it's hard to put that responsibility on people like that. You just know as your recreational thing, like you said, like the most important thing is to have fun. But I think that leadership is important to keep people interested in coming to your gym.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I don't want to say this in a sense that like act like, self-righteous and what have you, but I really strongly believe that the gym, like we have a community here, and it's really cool how like when I ask the members to get behind something, they get behind it. Like we do, like I'm not like tons of charity stuff, but we do some charity stuff. Like last year, we had a little thing in Grappling magazine or Jiu-Jitsu magazine because we did a thing we call it the Arm Barbecue, and we did it like to benefit like a stray rescue, and we invited all the gyms. We asked for a $20 donation, and we had this giant barbecue, and they brought a whole bunch of adoptable pets, and we ended up raising a couple grand for this this pet charity. And like right now in my lobby right now, we have an angel tree for them where people are bringing in all donations like leashes and dog food and all that stuff, and we just try to do a lot of different like things. And it's so cool because when the guys see that I think something's important, or I think that we can help in the community, they all get behind it too, and it's so cool. I think I saw a while back, like, and I'll probably butcher the quote, but that it really, really resonated with me. I think it was in John Jack Machado's school. I saw something he had like a quote on the wall. It said something to the effect of like, it's great to train hard and become a world champion, but it's better to be a great human being. And I thought that like, it was something like that. And I think that like is just totally, what I try to instill here at this gym. It's like, because it's like, I don't know, the arts transform people. And, I think it's cool that you can kind of get a bunch of like-minded people together and, kind of, target them at something good and then like kind of unleash them, No,
I think that's great. And I think I need to make a trip to where you are. If you're going to have a jiu-jitsu barbecue with dogs, that's like 3 of my favorite things right there. Sorry, I think I lost that last part. I lost connection for 1 second, but yeah, definitely if you'll allow it and you're cool with it, Shawn and I coming up there and doing jiu-jitsu, dogs, and barbecue. God,
we're gonna try to make it an annual thing because this last one went so well. We had it in June, so we'll probably shoot for June again. And it was cool. We had about 100 people on the mat, and it was a good time.
Nice. So before we head out, Kyle, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to? Sponsors, teams, coaches, anybody?
Honestly, my sponsors is NeoCell. They're a great supplement company. They send me supplements all the time, and the thing about that is like I hate all the people that I hate the people. I hate how like if you just get free stuff, people like, oh yeah, these people are the best, but I'm one of those people that like I don't want to put anything in my body unless like I do the research and I know it's good, and plus they're good people. But NeoCell they're just great people, and they really their products are awesome. Everything's like all natural, very help my joints tremendously. But they're my sponsor. They're really the only one I'd give a shout out to because they're awesome. But they help a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes, and other than that, just thank my students for letting me live my dream.
Well, Kyle, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us your wisdom and your insight, and it was a lot of fun. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for inviting me. Sorry, I'm usually a little bit more charismatic. I think like I said, the morning I'm usually shaking the cobwebs out, so I apologize if I'm a little humdrum,
That's all good. I think we're all a little tired, so we can all go take a nap now. So next week, have another podcast ready for you guys, and go to the Big Jiu-Jitsu page at bigjujitsu.com. Got t-shirts, and speaking of which, we have patches on the way in. So, Shawn, we will be sending these patches out to people who have been on the show. Finally, everybody who's been on the show, yeah. Thank Shawn. That was Shawn's idea. I'm greedy. I don't want to give you patches, but so once again, go to bigjujitsu.com, grab a t-shirt, grab a patch, grab a gi. Don't care. Follow us on Facebook. Facebook.com/BigJujitsu, or on Twitter @BigJujitsu. I'm Rob the Lord Humongous.
And I'm Shawn the Duke Humongous.
And we'll catch you all next week.